Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity shader tutorial. In this one I'm going to be responding to a comment on Reddit where someone was asking how to make 2D shaders or shaders for sprites or whatever you want to call it. And they were also asking, is it possible? And yes, it's possible. Just like anything with a material, it can be rendered differently with shaders. So for example, in the Unity, I'll link this in the description like I do in my shader tutorials. This is the default 2D sprite that Unity uses. It's called Ellen, because why not? And they have a sprite sheet for it. When you press play, as you see, it'll be animated. There are problems with some of them because they've set these up weirdly. I mean, you can actually get these to work if you mess around with the shader, but this one was also broken. I fixed this one. That's what we're going to be making today. Because I fixed it, I had a little look into how it worked, and it makes sense now. So these two seem to be just the exact same. I think they actually do use the same material. And then this one uses a normal material, which means that because of normals, it can actually reflect light. So if I move the light up to these other ones, it wouldn't actually make a difference. Obviously, the light appears on top of it, but this kind of makes it darker, and then you can actually have light over it. And it looks really cool as you get closer to the light. So you can actually have this in your 3D game. Like you could have an area with a light. Well, it's a dark area with a light, and then as they get closer to the light, it lights them up like that. It looks really cool. I like it. And then this one here is a gradient one, where you choose two colors, and you can have the gradient positioned. You can change in the shader where it is, but the middle is the default value. So if I put the spread to 1, and we select blue at the top and pink at the bottom for whatever reason, it adds the color tints to it, and then we can choose the position of where it cuts. So if we choose it a high value, it'll all be the second one. If we choose a low value, it'll all be the first one. And then rotation, as you can tell, whoops, set a really big value. You can turn around the rotation, so top going clockwise if we go up, and down goes anti-clockwise. And obviously, yeah, you can change colors and whatever you want. So you can also turn on view only gradient just to get the gradient of your thing right, which is quite helpful, and I'll cover how to do that in this. But in general, you'll probably just want, I guess you could do silhouettes with that, but you might want to see the actual texture as well. So we're going to get into making that, and you'll have your own sprites, presumably. If you don't, you can get these ones. I've made a scene for this, so let's not save that. We have Ellen here, simply just the sprite renderer with an animator on, so when I press play, we get this. Just her running, which isn't really necessary, but we have it anyway. Now, with sprite renderers, as you see, there is a material part. And just like you would with a 3D shader, you make a material and you apply a shader to it. So we're going to create a material called Ellen Matte and apply it to her. And she's going to look really weird. Yeah, and as you see here, it's Ellen Matte. And then we're going to create a PBR shader like usual. Ellen shader. We're going to put this onto here, and it looks all weird because the default this shader doesn't have anything on it, so we're going to open up the shader. Now the first goal we're going to make is we're going to get it to go back to looking like a default sprite renderer, and then we're going to actually do the gradient effect. So here's the output. We're going to move this to the side. So we want to take in the texture, as you do with anything with textures, and we're going to call it a sprite sheet because that's what we're taking in. Now when you make a normal material in here like we do usually, we'll see it on a sphere, and because this is a sprite sheet, we can still view it as a sphere. It just looks a bit odd, and you'll get used to it. Now let's put in the sprite sheet. Let's drag it in, and we're going to use a sprite sample sheet for this. And oops, that's just what I did. We're going to use a sprite sample sheet. This one, it already has a default input for this. We'll just put in ours, which is the same actually, but this lets us change it if we have more sprite sheets. And then we want the output to go to the alpha clip threshold. Now what that does is, as we turn down, well, we have to put this to transparent. As we turn down the alpha to, wait, what am I doing? Sorry, we don't actually need to do that. All we need is we need this x value actually to be any value less than 1. If it's less than 1, what it does is it cuts out the rest of the mesh. If I put like 0.9, 99999, basically, as long as you can see these, the higher the number, the better is it. this is the way I found to fix the default sprite sheets. You might not have this problem, but if you do, that's what you need to do. You need to change the alpha a bit, because for some reason if I leave it on opaque, obviously like, oh, well, it's actually the same if you do it on opaque, it seems. But anyway, sorry. So that's set up like that. So this isn't what we want really. If I save this now, we go back, we see, well, we've got rid of the stupid, let's just put in the sprite sheet. Okay, so if I press play, it'll animate. We've got rid of the stupid outline thing. We've got it set up with the alpha clip to cut out the bits of the mesh. It's like cookie cutters. We want to cut out the bits of the sprite that we want for Ellen. And then the only other part we need in here is the albedo, which basically is, you know, the flat texture of what it looks like. But we want to do some effect to it. So we're going to have a multiply. And this is going to take the texture here. Whoops, what am I doing? Multiply A and B doesn't actually matter what A and B is, because if you multiply two numbers, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. It doesn't make a difference. We're going to take another input, which we'll sort that out. That's the gradient. But the output is going to go to a branch node. Now this isn't necessary, but it's something they do, and I feel like, because now that I understand what it does, it's very easy to understand. It just didn't make sense at first. I had to look. If you need to know the documentation for anything in here, you just right click, open documentation. This will just say it multiplies the values. It's pretty simple. Returns the input of A multiplied by B. On branch it does the same, and I'm going to explain this. So you see here we've got predicate, true, and false. And basically what it means is, well, we're going to put the output to albedo, and we're going to have two inputs, and literally how it works is, depending on whether this is true or false, it changes the output. So right now, by default values, it's got x is 1 and x is 0. It's 1 for true and 0 for false. And 0 in colour terms is black because it's the absence of light, and 1 is white because it's complete light. So if this is false right now, it means 0. So this is black. If I clicked tick, it means that it goes to 1, which is white. Now, we don't want just black and white. I'm wondering why the outside of this is lighter. I think it's just to do with the fact... Well, let me put transparent. No. It's to do with the fact... Oh, it's because it's metallic. Yeah, I can't speak. It's because it's metallic. Let's turn down the smoothness to 0. There we go. This is what it'll actually look like, unless you want shine on it. So what we can do here is we can actually take in a boolean in the inspector, and they use it for doing the gradient. So I'll just put a toggle gradient, and we'll put it in to here. And basically it just means that from the inspector now we can turn on and off the gradient when we've made it. Okay, so obviously like this here now controls this. Cool. Okay, we're going to probably work backwards on this. I think working backwards is an okay way to do this. So we also want to take the output of this. Wait, have I already made the multiply? This is the multiply, sorry. I've got my thing really messed up, my layout. So let's just move stuff back over here that we don't need. Okay, so we need the output of this multiply to go into, we want false, because if we want to view gradient, we want the other option. So this can be the false. So now if we save it, here we go, we've got it back to normal. And then if I put it to true, I feel like it just goes back to the no texture because the other option is empty. There's just nothing there. So let's go and do that now. So here we go, we've got our multiply, but we haven't got it multiplied with anything. So what do we want to do? We want to make the gradient, and there's different ways of making gradients, but what we're going to do is we're going to move all the way over here so we have plenty of room. We're first of all going to take in the position. This just simply gives us an output, a vector-free position output, and we're going to also take in, let me just minimize these. Okay, we're going to take in a, what else does it, we need a 1, a vector 1, which is going to be a degree of rotation, so 0 to 360. And if you go above 360, it kind of loops back on itself, so like 361 is the same as 1. So we'll just call this a rotation. And this is the rotation of the gradient, so I'll put gradient rotation to be more explicit what it is. And the default value doesn't really matter, so we'll leave it as 0. Now, yeah, this value is going to be between 0 and 360. Now, the cool thing is, there's a rotate module, whatever these are actually called. I call them modules, they're called nodes, sorry, nodes. So we can put the rotation into here, so as we change the rotation it turns this around, and the UV will just be the position. We don't need a center, that's going to be default 0, 0. Let's actually move that to 0, 0. Don't think that's going to make a difference really. Let's move this down, we need more room, plenty more room. So this basically means that we can change the rotation now to like 180. 360, which will be the same. Well, oh no, because it's doing it by the vector. Yeah, basically, yeah, as we change this, it changes the rotation. You'll see it better in the actual game view. Now we want to take only one of these values, so we can take the RG or the B. So let's just take the. Well, we have to put it in here first. We want to first of all get our other node. We need an input. Which is going to be a vector 1, and this is just going to be a value of like how much of the mesh, how much of the material is going to be covered in, well basically it's where does it split as such. So let's just call this gradient spread. I'm using the same names they use because they're good names, and the gradient spread can go below here because these two will be going in the same node. And we need to multiply them together. So what we're going to get is we're going to get an amount here, so just a raw value that's in the inspector we can increase or decrease, and it's going to go with the, well, it doesn't really matter what we put in. They use G, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. Really doesn't make a difference. If it caused a problem I would change it, but I'm sure it won't. Now obviously you won't notice anything here because it's on 0, but if we put it up to 1, obviously that means the gradient's halfway. 2, 3, 4, it's just kind of empowering it. Put in like 100. It's never going to go more than halfway though. So yeah, it's just going to get more powerful. We'll leave it at 1. The reason is because the G value, I wish we could inspect the G value in here. It doesn't just tell you, but we'll see in the output anyway. Now one other thing we want to do is we've got the gradient, but that's only going to go to halfway. Because, oh yeah, it's because it's coming from top down. It's kind of like last time when it's only going to go to the halfway. All this isn't seen. But we can take in another vector 1 for the actual like position of the gradient. So how far up and down it is. You saw I moved the slider earlier. So we can have gradient position. Now, let me just see what value this is what good value this is for a default. Now we want to add this, which basically is kind of like an offset, so like the more I increase it the more it'll move. So put in the B and the A, and here if I change the gradient position to 1 all the way, 0, put 0 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, as you see. Anyway, we will go for 1. We might not actually want 1. Now assuming you've done coding before, or any graphical things, or just coding, you should know what lerping is. Now, lerp is not the live action. It's not. That's LARPing. Sorry. Well, lerp is basically where you have a smoothened anything. Like you can use lerping for getting from one number to another number. So, like, let's say you have a projectile and you want it to turn a corner for whatever reason. If you just had it change from one value to another, it would just to kind of jump. So let's say you want to get from here to here and there's a wall. You don't want to go like up right. It wouldn't look very good if a projectile went up right. You want it to kind of go up curving right. So what lerping does is it kind of limits the amount that it can move at once so that it comes out to have like a smooth curve. So what we're going to do with lerp here is we want our gradient not to just be a cutoff. We want it to like slowly we want it to be a gradient, right, between the two things. Now, we want it to lerp between two values. Now, this is going to be the actual, like, how the thing is going to lerp. And we need two values, which are going to be colors. So, we'll just need to take in two colors to lerp between. So, we'll just have, like, color 1. We'll just put as blue. Why not? Put it as a blue. And we'll have color 2. for the other colour we get to blend with, and we'll go for a red. Why not? And then we'll put in colour 1 and colour 2. And these will go into the A and B. And as you see now, we can lerp between them. If I didn't have lerp and I said a red and blue, it would be red, and then right at the middle it would slice, and then the bottom bit would be blue. Or this, wait, what other colour I chose? Yeah, it's gone kind of nicey purple. But, oh yeah, it's actually okay, it makes sense. Because obviously we're slowly going from 2 colours, so in the middle you're going to get the blend of the colours. Now if we wanted to kind of see more of the blue and move it up, we can just change the gradient position to like 0.5, 0.4, whoops, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1. 0 is all blue. Actually, no, it's not, because by default it's like this. Sorry, that's what it's like at 0. If we went into -1, then you get the full blue. But anyway, we'll leave it at 1. It's a nice kind of gradient there. Now, we're going to output this to 2 different places, which you're completely allowed to do. You're allowed to put 1 out to 2 places. So, first of all, we want to... Ooh, yeah, we need to move our branch thing along quite a bit. Ooh. Okay. I'm going to output 1 to the true. Now, what this means is that we're allowed to now toggle the gradient, right? So if I do toggle gradient, we just see the gradient, because it's going to be true, so we just get this onto the mesh, onto the material. But if I turn it off, then we get the whole thing. But we also want to apply the gradient to the thing, which is how we're going to multiply it. So we put the output also to B. And now it's applied the gradient to the thing. So if I save this, now that we've done our magic, I hope this all makes sense. Here's obviously you can't read everything from here, but here's the whole zoomed out, how we've linked everything up, just so you can compare yours. Obviously you can make it a bit neater if you really want that. Let's move it down, out the way. So here we go, we've got our gradient, and it's usually the default values we put in, but let's say we want, now, we want it to actually change from green up to orange. And we want the position of the gradient to be, I don't know, closer to the top, so her head's kind of like that. And then the spread, we want it to kind of just go to the head. Obviously, if you want, you can spin it around and have the rotation changed. So that's how the input changes with the rotation. Now, it's not between 0 and 360, actually. It appears like going from 0 to 2 to 3 to 4, 5, 6. You can go all the way around before that. Just drag the word, and you'll be able to easily change the rotation of that. But I'll leave that 0. So anyway, the inputs you have is the sprite sheet to use. You have, well, you can toggle the gradient on and off if you want that. I just thought I'd add that feature because it's nice to know what branch does, and also they used it in their example. Obviously, rotation is where is the gradient rotated around the center. The spread, how far it spreads down or up. The position is kind of different to the spread because, well, if I put the position down, it can only spread from the position. But obviously, if you go into negative values and it's like inversed, makes sense. You can make some pretty cool effects with that, can't you? I'm not here to be creative with this, really. You can go away and make your own things. But it is cool what you can make. And obviously, like, you can always input different colors depending on the environment you're in and have like cool looking things in certain places. But anyway, I hope this tutorial answered the question for the person who wondered how you make shaders for sprites. If I press play now, it should run like normal. As I say in all my videos, like, if you like this kind of video, then like the video so I know to make more. Also one thing to note, yeah, with the position shader, because the character's moving up and down, but it's staying in the same position technically, the line on the sprite where the position is where it's going to stay. So even if the sprite moves up here and down here, because the position in the world is what we're getting here. Now, I could change this to be object so that it would be relative to the object, but if we have it in the world, let's say you went underwater and you had the position for like the water level, you could make it so the sprite goes blue when they go underwater. For example, it's a good use of it, isn't it? So, yep, anyway, so here's the whole thing. If you like the video, then be sure to like, subscribe, comment what you want more tutorials on, comment what I did well, comment what you want to know, anything, just say what you want. In the description, we have a link to our Discord where we talk about game development, coding stuff, nerd stuff. I'm sure you're all nerds here. obviously subscribing to the channel would help a lot, since I've noticed it's actually growing quite quickly recently. My Unity tutorials seem to get the most views, so I'm going to make more of those, but I'll still do the Python videos because I love doing those, and I'll still keep up to date with some Java videos every so often, some JavaScript videos, sorry. But yeah, I've said all the like, subscribe nonsense and Discord and whatever, so if I haven't got anything else to say, which I don't think I do, I'll link this in the description, the shader package for the shader graph thing that Unity put out. But yeah, thanks for watching, and goodbye.